Welcome to the Judgment Call podcast, a podcast where I bring together some of the most curious minds on the planet. Risk takers, travelers, adventurers, investors, entrepreneurs, or simply mind bogglers. To find all the episodes of this show, please go to iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or go to judgmentcallpodcast.com. For more resources, including how to become a guest, how to advertise, and to see all the lectures, podcasts, and books I would like you to listen to or read, please also go to our website at judgmentcallpodcast.com. Like this show, please consider leaving a review on iTunes, or like us and subscribe to us on YouTube. That will make it easier for other users like you to find us later on. This episode of the Judgment Call podcast is sponsored by Mighty Travels Premium. Full disclosure, this is also my business. What we do at Mighty Travels Premium is to find the best travel deals for you as they happen. We do that in economy, premium economy, business, and first class, and we screen 450,000 new airfare deals every day just for you and present the best based on your preferences. Thousands of subscribers have saved up to 95% on their airfare deals. In case you didn't know, Americans and Europeans can already travel to more than 80 different countries again, South America, in Africa, and in Eastern Europe. To try out Mighty Travels Premium for free, go to mightytravels.com/MTP. If that's too much for you to type, just type in MTP4U.com, MTP4U.com to start your 30-day free trial. I'm here today with Evan Weber, and Evan has been breathing digital marketing for more than 20 years. And Evan is a cool dude, and he now has his own digital marketing agency. And he's helped over 300 companies to fix their social marketing to improve their ROIs. And also, Evan has been a speaker at various industry events, and I'm very happy to have him on the podcast today. How are you, Evan?
Great, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Hey, absolutely. Thanks for doing this. You're definitely the expert in digital marketing, and it's a big topic of interest to me because we had this theme earlier in another episode where we realized, with all this scale that you have for a business now, attention is really where the scarcity lies, and attention it really decides about the success or not the success of your business. So I'm really, really curious to explore this topic a little deeper. As we go into this, help us a little bit better to understand how you saw the landscape of digital marketing change over the years. What's your own personal development story with this? What did you see like back in the 90s, how it started and where we are right now?
Yeah, thanks for having great question. Very broad, topic there. But in general, back in the 90s, it was really just very early days of websites. No, the shopping carts weren't very good. There's nowhere to really run ads. Google was just starting. Very early days of pay-per-click advertising. It was really all organic at the time. I used to list on eBay with some early business partners of mine that we sold antiques, and we did a lot of eBay listings. So eBay was popping. As it progressed into the 2000s, then you get pay-per-click coming on. Email marketing, blasting emails to lists got very popular. Organic traffic was always, popular. And then as you started progressing, Facebook came on and changed the landscape. Retargeting ads came on and changed the landscape. Tools, e-commerce tools like CRO tools and other tools for websites started coming on and really changing the landscape. So over the years, the early days, it was all organic. That was the only way to drive traffic. Then it became making digital advertising work. And then it became honing the conversion rate while making digital advertising work, which allows for scale. So that's pretty much how it unfolded.
Yeah, I mean, I've been seeing it from my point of view, being an entrepreneur and starting businesses that are purely digital. And when I go back, there is this strong. There's always a big new thing. And initially, as you said, it was organic. The name of the game was SEO. Like, it was relatively easy to go on for a lot of search terms in the top 5, top 10 of search results if you put a little bit of effort to it. And you could launch pretty much any company you wanted off this, and because it was so easy to get that traffic. And Google had this massive amount of traffic, and the search engine, for better or worse, I think now is really geared towards the incumbents. So the big brand names, those are people that have done really well in the search engine game for 20 years. But in 2007, and it was back in the times of Bitrate. I don't know if people remember that, but that was the Google Shopping at the time. It was way bigger than Google Shopping.
Yeah.
And it was relatively easy for Bitrate as well to basically be in the top 10 for any search term, say for an iPhone or for generic terms. And then there was this day back in 2008, 2009, when Bitrate basically launched a $1 billion business off this. And then it was just gone. So Google just pressed the button and said, oh, we think now we gave you like a ton of traffic over the years. And now we consider you guys spam and have a good day. So basically, they were blacklisted from Google. They were still in there, but they were not visible in the top 100 results. So basically, it's like blacklisting. How do you deal as a marketer with these sudden changes, right? You optimize for something. It's kind of like a hedge fund that optimizes for a certain paradigm out there. And then one day Google says, oh, by the way, this is all evil. And then now go figure and do something new.
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting topic you bring up, because over the years, Google did crack down on sites with less valuable content. As you had your own sites, content-based sites back in the day, you were able to drive a lot of traffic on your own content-based sites, I recall. And yeah, those sites like Bitrate, I guess let's use as an example. But there was a lot of shenanigans used to go on in the organic results. A lot of affiliates used to spam content into the organic results. They used to put up sites with, hundreds of thousands of pages of manufactured content. And over the years, Google had to really filter the crap out. And they did a good job, in my estimation. That being said, I'm sure some companies paid a price for, writing off their previous rankings, and then, one day, your rankings aren't going to be valid anymore because none of your content's original, and it's a bunch of product catalog feeds. So yeah, that was a interesting phenomenon. But as far as Google Organics go, I've preached and lived by the same principles for the last 20 years. Frequent original content, in a preponderance. Quality inbound links where you can attain them. Never buying links, but attaining good quality inbound links here and there. But really, it's a 95% content strategy, proactive content publishing. And if you adhere to that strategy, you will gain organic rankings over time. The more you publish, the more organic traffic you should get if you keep it up. So that's what I tell companies, and that's what I live by myself, my own sites, any company I work with on the SEO strategy. That's the strategy, and I've never seen it not work. Now, where it tends to produce more revenue these days is doing things like retargeting the blog readers, retargeting the people that come to the site organically with ads to bring them back to the landing page you want to convert them at, or popping up, building your email list. So squeezing more out of the content is all the thing to do in this day and age. Then you can invest in content, invest in growing your SEO, your organic content. And in my opinion, it's easier to squeeze revenue out of that investment than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago, before the days of retargeting ads, before other tools, website-based tools that help capitalize on traffic were in play. It was, they come and they go. They come and they go. Having a lot of organic traffic back in the day didn't necessarily lead to massive amounts of revenue. It could, depends on what's being sold and how it's being positioned. But now I feel like it's much easier to tie revenue to the channel. And when you say we're investing in SEO content, for instance, we're spending $10,000 a month or $5,000 a month or whatever, we know we're going to get this much in sales over time. So, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to use this example for SEO, and you're absolutely right what you describe in the story, how it happened. What I wanted to use is as an example for these big things that are relatively easy for an entrepreneur to take advantage of, to get your product out there, and then they suddenly disappear. And SEO was kind of the first one I was involved in. And then the second one was Google AdWords, which had a lot of keywords that were really cheap. You could literally go to legal advice and buy it for 2 cents or 5 cents. Maybe not in the US, it would go up to 50 cents pretty quickly. But there was a lot of inventory available for any entrepreneur. It was very affordable. And I agree with you, the monetization at the time was behind because fewer people would buy things online, and credit cards online were less accepted. There was no Bitcoin. There was a lot of things that make sites very valuable, and the traffic valuable now weren't invented yet. But as an entrepreneur, it was like you didn't even have to worry about getting the word out. You didn't have to do PR. You could do PR if you wanted to, but it was kind of seen as dirty, so to speak, right? You didn't have to really worry about the competition with the brick and mortar side or with other brands because you lived in a digital realm. And then Google AdWords and the Yahoo was at the time still there, and Bing is still there, and there's a couple of non-US giants who run this. They suddenly get really expensive, especially in the US, not so much for traffic outside the US, but especially in the US. And then 2013, the next thing came around with social media. And I remember that growing your Instagram was easy as pie. I mean, you literally just put photos up and you had hundreds of followers just joining whatever you did every day. And then it was a time, 2016 or 17, when that was over. So it was the algorithm changed. Facebook changed their algorithm, how they promote content in their own newsfeed. So suddenly, without changes on your own, and this is what I'm trying to get to, you have this moving target of you being pushed into an ecosystem. It works for you. It's cheap. It's affordable. You can create businesses off that. But then usually it's Google or it can be Facebook or whoever runs this platform decides, oh, by the way, the rules have changed. And for pretty much everyone, it becomes really much more difficult, literally because they want to make more money, right? But how do you deal with this constant, you keep running against the wall, and then it appears the wall, and then you're like, okay, let's write this off and let's do something else. How do you deal with this emotionally and professionally?
Yeah, that's a great question and a great point. Over the years, these platforms have increased their rates. Like you said, early on, Google, you could get traffic for 10, 20 cents, a click. Now you can't get a click for under $1. I mean, they have minimums. They have, in an uncompetitive niche with no competitors, there's still click cost minimums. So they never had that back in the day. It makes it a lot harder for newer advertisers to make Google ads work, per se. Bing is they don't have as much traffic, but they don't have the minimums that Google has. So I do steer people there or say, you have to run on Bing ads in addition to Google ads. But Facebook as well. Facebook, over the last couple of years, especially in the last year, has jacked up their rates. During the political season, during the holiday shopping season, the rates went through the roof. The only way so this is the reality of digital advertising where we are. You're at the mercy of the platform. You're at the mercy of how many competitors when they decide to jack up the rates. So you can't really control that aside from good optimization and good management where it's, applicable, but really it falls to the website's efficacy, the website's effectiveness. So, for instance, when I work with a client or any company that wants to work with me or my agency, I, insist that they prioritize increasing the website's conversion rate. So I'll audit the website. I'll provide a list of suggestions, recommendations, tools that I recommend to boost conversion rate, things like social proof, the right review widget, the right pop-ups, the right automated email follow-ups. The list goes on and on. But those are the main ones. But so the company, if you're an entrepreneur, you're a new advertiser, you really have to focus on honing the website's conversion rate. And I feel like it can be done with all like the apps on Shopify and the tools and the apps that that are out there. You can plug into any e-commerce website or any website in general. The tools are out there. It's implementing them properly. So you need to bring in someone, an expert, for instance, or you need to learn up on how to implement those tools. Once you have the right tools running the right way on the website, you should be able to make the traffic sources convert well enough. That being said, there are other variables like how much the traffic ends up costing, how targeted is it, how much intent there is with the traffic source. So every traffic source has a different level of user intent. So like affiliate traffic, for instance, a lot of it doesn't have a lot of intent because it's a banner on a website, a blog, for instance. So you have to really try extra hard to make that traffic convert so the affiliates can make money and they can prosper. Something like Google, the intent is there, the search intent is there, so the conversion rate should be higher, but the cost will be higher. So regardless of the channel, it's always a question of the conversion rate not being good enough. In fact, I have a saying, 99% of companies can't even realize all their search volume. They don't convert well enough. So 99% of companies aren't even able to come up in search as much as they ought to be based on their targeted keyword phrases because their website conversion rate is strangling their ability to spend, and ability to realize all the volume out there, their targeted search volume. So it's a huge problem. It's always been a problem. And over time, it's gotten to be a little bit worse of a problem because of the costs increasing further. So, but at the end of the day, you always have to really prioritize conversion rate optimization on the site or the landing page if you're going to advertise effectively online and achieve scale.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about Shopify. That's maybe just me. I know very little about Shopify and what it actually does. And it sounds like it's just e-commerce, or basically just you have a site where you sell something in terms of products. But I think it's more than that. What I know, and that's only from Cloudflare, what they have done over time is because they run 50% of the internet traffic, you have an enormous amount of apps that you can basically put in between your site and Cloudflare as a public access point. And it's all tracking, it's kind of heat maps, it's ways to increase conversion, to track your traffic, is to retarget. So all these things they've been adding. I think this is how they make money, because I always wondered how Cloudflare will ever make money. They have all this kind of dumb traffic, and they have streaming traffic, and they seem to have no way of directly making money. Is Shopify similar to that, or is it something completely different? I know too little about it.
Yeah, they're different platforms with different purposes. Similar in that they're website-based platforms. Cloudflare is more on the like you said, the access points to the website, right? Making sure it's secure, making sure it's fast, making sure it's all the things Cloudflare does that are very valuable. You want to have those things in place so you can, have a fast website, have a very accessible website, don't get your website hacked. So very valuable, tool set around Cloudflare. Shopify is more on the e-commerce side. So it's an e-commerce platform that has a giant app directory, which they're basically a bunch of tools. There's several thousand. They call them apps, but they're really tools. So they have basically one-click implementation into the website, one-click installation of the tool into the website. So if you want to launch a customer referral widget, refer a friend, find the one you want, click a button, boom, installed. You want to launch a CRO tool, find the one you want, click it, boom, installed. You want to launch a retargeting platform, boom, done. So on that level, they've far exceeded any of the other e-commerce platforms, in my opinion, for bringing tools to websites. And in my opinion, bringing tools to websites has revolutionized e-commerce. Even before the pandemic and the surge online, it was already surging. It was already surging, and the tools were facilitating people purchasing online, and it was helping. That being said, so where Shopify has really stolen the show is, you can be a small merchant and they have a solution for you, all the way up to the biggest merchants, enterprise level. They have a solution for you. So now they run the whole gamut, the smallest to the biggest. And that's where no other e-commerce platform is touching them right now. And not to mention, they have a really nice dashboard for their store owners, their shop owners. They've put a lot of effort into building out the dashboard, making it nice, making it suggest things, add this, add that, check this out, check that out. So they've done a good job. It's taken a while to get there, but I'd say in the last year to two, they've really advanced the product, as far as usability of the store owners. And so the problem though is, and while all of that sounds great, the flip side is people that launch stores aren't necessarily successful. So what's the churn rate? My gut instinct is it's probably over 70% of people that launch a store abandon it within a year or two. Okay. Because they just can't make it work. They can't drive enough traffic to it, make it convert well enough to get a return. So they abandon the project. But that's just the flip side. That's like the underbelly of, people that sometimes come my way and say, I have a Shopify store. How do I grow this thing? And then it leads into a conversation like this of how it's done and why you're finding it so difficult. So it's definitely not easy to just, throw up an e-commerce store and make it successful. It's still very, very difficult. Regardless of how many people have surged online, it's still a big task to make it work.
Yeah, a lot of people jumped on that opportunity back in March, especially because seemingly a lot of demand patterns that have been stable for some time changed immediately. I mean, travel was down. There was luxurious items were down. Everything that was, not absolutely needed was down. But then there was a lot of PPE equipment that was suddenly needed and it was hard to get. So a lot of people jumped into the scene if they had inventory, they had a supplier, and tried to take advantage of this. Is that something you can pull off in like a couple of days, literally a couple of weeks, or do you need like a more wholesome story and strategy to it to actually pull off an e-commerce store? Because I always felt it's very, very competitive out there. I've never really had an e-commerce store on my own. I always felt it's so competitive and has been super competitive the last 20 years that I always felt, so you can obviously pull it up, but how do you find the demand? Unless you already know the demand, like literally have a newsletter and there's 20,000 people on it that actually want to buy only from you. But unfortunately, I was never in that position.
Well, again, it's back to, a very difficult thing to make work, regardless of how many people are shopping online now. You still, how to make it work, you advertise with Google, you advertise with Bing, you advertise with Facebook. You grow your email list, you find affiliates, you do things on the site to make the site convert better. Over time, if you do those things effectively, you can make it work and grow it and make it work, methodically over time. But as far as jumping in there and making, a big splash in a month, no, I don't think so. It may happen here or there with some things, may be able to be the aberration or whatever the word would be. But in general, what I tell companies is companies grow annually, right? Companies grow annually. What you do year two should far exceed what you did year one online. If let's say e-commerce, for instance, year two will far exceed year one. And then year three should exceed year two. Probably by not the same amount, but still, exponential. It depends, though, on the niche, how competitive it is, how good you're doing at selling on your site, what exactly you're selling, if it's in demand, if it's a good product, if people have a high level of satisfaction, so they repeat purchase. Many factors involved in making an e-commerce, endeavor successful. You have to hit on all those cylinders. You have to hit on all cylinders. Make all channels work simultaneously. And that's what I believe in, a multi-channel approach, making all the channels, work. They all have to be tested. TikTok isn't going to work for everyone, and Google isn't going to work for everyone, and Facebook may not work for everyone. But they all have to be tested with the right strategy in place, with the right tools in place. If you try to test them without the right strategy or tools, you'll end up saying this channel just doesn't work. And that would be an inaccurate statement because it just wasn't done properly with the right tools in place. So I hear that a lot. Google ads doesn't work. Facebook ads doesn't work for me. You just didn't do it properly. That being said, if I'm involved and it's not working, then maybe it isn't going to work. But still, it should be made to work. There isn't a channel out there that's what I consider a high quality traffic source, like Google, like Facebook, Bing, even affiliate traffic that you can't make work. If people are searching and the product is fitting their needs, you should be able to make that work and get a return on ad spend that's acceptable, or ROI. But it's always a project. Everything is a different different industry, different budget, different conversion rate. So it's a lot of the strategies are the same, but each project is just its own entity. So it just has to be made to work.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned social media advertising, and I've been involved into some TikTok trials. I mean, just trying out TikTok for my own businesses, and the challenge seems to be twofold. One is you generally, if you have like an account on Instagram and it has 1 million followers, you kind of have a guarantee that, say, 100,000 maybe or 200,000 followers will actually see the post. They might not like it, but they see it and they can react to it in a positive, negative way, or they can just ignore it because they find it of no interest. With TikTok, the problem is that the algorithm is not really taking into account as much the follower structure. So you might have 2 million followers, but you put up a post because your advertiser post is sponsored and slightly different than the regular posts, they might only get 1,000 views instead of like 100,000 or 200,000. So I find it really difficult to predict the success and also predict the deal with one of the influencers that you have to strike. Their current rates are somewhere around $100 to $1,000 or even more than that. And I find it really difficult to find the pricing, and the creators have the same problem, right? They have maybe some posts that are skyrocketing with millions of views, and the next one gets 200, and it doesn't really grow from there, despite huge follower counts. So I found it really difficult, to make that work, and then find an agreement that works for everyone involved. And then third, I find it difficult to convert that traffic. It's a lot of browsing. There's a lot of people who are underage. The user base is very strong in the 12 to 18-year-old, a little less or much less once you go further. And the credit card spending is just not a thing you do when you're under 18. And maybe some teenagers can use their parents' credit card, but it's still the way to actually sell something is very long, and it's more like a long-term investment. But it's very tempting, right? Because you talk to teenagers who have 100 million followers, and they would say, "Oh, just do a post, $100, and then you're good to go." So you try a lot of things, and you lose a lot of hope. So that's kind of my personal experience with a lot of social media advertising. We've done similar things on Instagram and Facebook, but the influencers on TikTok are kind of a enigma to me. I don't know how to make money off TikTok. Maybe you know.
Well, you bring up a good topic in general, because the reality of it is even influencers with a large following on these platforms, when they do an organic post, it may not do anything, right? Organic posts, regardless of how many followers they have, may not do a dime of revenue, or it may do a little bit of revenue. But in my opinion, you can't count on any revenue from an organic post. Okay. That being said, where the power of these influencers is having them create the content for the company. So they create the content for the brand, and then the brand or the advertiser uses that content in their own ad campaigns. So you have a TikTok influencer or an Instagram influencer make a story for you, right? You take this, you pay them for the story. You take the story and you run it in your own Instagram ad campaigns, Facebook/Instagram ad campaigns. Same thing on TikTok. You take the vertical video, the story that they create for your, that you're paying them to do. You take the content and you run it in your own ad campaigns on TikTok. And but here's the caveat. That strategy works well on Facebook and Instagram. Okay. I know definitively that taking influencer created content for the brand and using it in the brand's ad campaigns is a great way to make those ad campaigns convert well, especially to the retargeting audience, even top of the funnel. That's some of the best type of ad unit you can use on Facebook and Instagram is influencer created content, right? But on TikTok, the reality of it is, I don't care how cheap the traffic is, as far as, when you pay to advertise, it could be 10 cents a click. If the conversion rate isn't there, you're still going to lose money. So their challenge is, yeah, they have a ton of volume, but the only companies you really see advertising are big brands because they're throwing branding dollars at it. And I do see here and there some smaller dogs like a CBD company or a this or that, like smaller brands trying to run ads, and try to make it work. But, I've run some campaigns on there and seen that it drives a lot of clicks and not many conversions, if at all. But that's my experience. I don't want to generalize and say no brand or advertiser can make that work. But at least from what I've seen, and to your point of the demographic and the nature of the app, they're not, in buying mode. They're browsing, idiotic videos. Some more than others. Some are valuable, some not. But the majority of it's not. Let's be honest. So yeah, the main user base are people that don't have income, right? And that's one challenge. And the other challenge is the nature of the app is not exactly shopping oriented. Now, they may bring that on as they bring on like shopping features, like what Instagram did, then maybe it'll get into a range of, yeah, we can get a return on ad spend here. But until they have good e-commerce shopping features, for instance, and things that really facilitate the sale or the lead, then to me, I wouldn't spend a dime on maybe testing it a little bit, a few $100, whatever. It depends what the budget looks like, but yeah, it's not exactly a direct response oriented.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting way to put it. I feel like it's something that has a lot of potential, but we will have to see how it actually plays out. There's an ethical aspect to this, and we talked about that before. There seems to be the obvious interest from social media companies to get as much data as possible from you and harvest it across your browsing history. They buy a lot of data from public marketplaces. Your cable company gives them your records. Your phone company gives them records, and Alexa has all the speech records that they accumulate. So there's a lot of data that they obviously need from a business perspective, because all that targeting kind of runs through the AI and creates that model kind of. You're similar to that person where we know this person buys plasma screens twice a year, so you might also be interested in a plasma screen. So I fully understand the business case, but the amount of data that they're able to procure, because it's gotten so big, on one hand, through their own activity, but also from third parties, like Facebook is in pretty much any other app that you find in the App Store. Even if you don't use Facebook on your phone, you're still being targeted and fully surveilled by Facebook.
Yeah.
What do you feel the ethical story there is? And obviously as a marketer, you need that data because you need to make the ROI work. Do you think there will be a backlash? And people have been talking about this, but kind of it's been ignored publicly for the last 5-10 years. Do you think this is going to continue, or there will be a massive backlash and you get kind of a privacy shield that you can use in your phone or you can use on your computer? How do you see this whole area?
Yeah, I think over time, as the privacy stuff has unfolded, in Europe and overseas and a little bit here, over time, it will continue to unfold and give people the option to remove themselves from being targeted in certain ways. But I have to tell you, I don't think, 98% of people aren't even going to care about, not being targeted like that. You have a very small percentage of people that, are obsessed with it. And then you have maybe a few that are concerned with it. But in general, I don't see it really coming on too strictly, because at the end of the day, the online advertising world is driven by these platforms, right? So if you crack down on these platforms' ability to target, not saying they should have free reign over anything and everything. I'm not saying that. But if you restrict their ability to target, it just reduces the responsiveness of the ads and the ability to target and things like that. So the forces that keep all of that where it is, I don't, some of these, Facebook, Google, I mean, these are the biggest companies, Apple, these are the biggest companies in the world, so they're not going to, let anything jeopardize their ability to serve ads to people and make money off of it. Like I said, it may get a little stricter in certain ways, what you can and cannot do with data behind the scenes, or allowing a person to control how they're being targeted, with ads, and opting out maybe. But again, I don't think many people are too really care about it or too concerned. They're just regular people going about their internet, browsing on their phone or whatever, like they do, clicking on ads if it looks interesting, or they recognize they were there 3 days ago, or oblivious to Google's ads at the top, if they're paid or not. Most people don't even give a crap, right? So at least here in the US, other countries I can't speak for, and I know they're more concerned about these things elsewhere. So, but that's not my concern, because my focus is in the US. But yeah.
Yeah, no, understood. I think that's a very practical view. I feel like from a technical perspective, it's very easy and Eric Weinstein was saying that Apple goes through a lot of trouble to have all the activation of cameras and microphones completely software based. Would be much easier to have a little switch on the side from day one. Maybe now it's a little different, but they go through a lot of effort to collect that data. But from a technical perspective, it's relatively easy, say, to reject third-party cookies or to have most of the apps open source in terms of their privacy issues. And there were researchers who did this for TikTok. It's really not hard to see, like you analyze the network traffic for the TikTok app, and then you see what it actually does. Every kid can do this, every 12-year-old. And then you just block the sites that are not TikTok servers, and then the app will stop working, right? But you could say, oh, no, you need to have verified, like we work with HTTPS, it needs to be verified your server, or you can't use this in your app. So all the tracking would go away, because then the traffic is only between you and TikTok. I mean, they can do something on server side, but that's much more harder to track someone through third parties. And the same is true, like for browser identification. It's relatively easy, and there's browsers now out there who have a unique fingerprint. And so you can't be tracked. Every single request is a unique fingerprint. And otherwise, like right now, you don't even need cookies to track people. Right. So the technical abilities to prevent tracking is actually pretty easy. But as you say, I mean, the lobby billions are obviously on the other side. They're like, let's leave everything the way it is, and let's make money from it. And I'm not denying there is efficiency, right? I mean, the way for marketers and entrepreneurs to target their potential customers is fantastic, right? This is something we've never had before. There's this old statement that you never know which part of your advertising budget is saved, and which one is targeting customers who actually never convert. So you go out and you let it rain, and you never know what conversion there will be and who's going to be responsive. But with the digital advertising, we have a lot more data, and we go down really, really specifically now into targeting. And then the AI is also targeting, not just we target by demographics and by interest. The AI goes deeper into it and sees, okay, these people might be in the cohort that should be targeted with this ad. So I think it's a great thing for entrepreneurs in theory. But given that it's so monopolized, I feel it hasn't really worked out so well. So in my own theory, I feel the last 5-10 years with less of a widespread entrepreneurship and less adoption of technology, a lot of this is that entrepreneurs, young companies, unless they have huge funding rounds like Uber had and obviously Airbnb had, it's very difficult for them to find their customers en masse. It is possible, obviously, in a niche, you can make this happen, but the connection with your customer has gotten really expensive. And for a lot of startups, they need basically free access to customers in order to take off, like to go to Series A or go to Series B. And I feel the the monopolization of online advertising is responsible for that. Like a big deal of less entrepreneurship that we've seen is because of the monopolistic practices that they have adopted. In order to make money, obviously, they are following a path of maximization there. But I always feel there should be a competitor. There should be a next thing that's coming and that really breaks up that monopoly, but hasn't happened in the last 10 years.
Well, I agree with you that, competition is good, but the reality of it is there only can be one Google, there only can be one Facebook, there only can be one Instagram, there only can be one LinkedIn, and there only can be one Twitter for that matter. But, these platforms, they've grown their user bases and the user experience, and they all have their distinct advantages, right? Where they're light years ahead of anyone who would try to go in and do that similar thing. So not to mention, Google is great at what they do. They're all great at what they do. And they have thousands of people working to make it better. So very hard to compete with something like that has such a light speed advantage and so far ahead. And so many developers on it, so many high-level people on it, you're just not going to be able to catch up. Now,
yeah, for sure. But you don't want to create a better Google. You do want to create a way to connect with your potential customers. It doesn't have to be Google, right? LinkedIn doesn't do what Twitter does. Twitter doesn't do what Google does. So, but they all connect you with potential new customers. So there's literally thousands of different applications who could do that. Some do it, right? I'm not saying they don't do it, but I feel there isn't a big thing right now for entrepreneurs to just to reach their customers for very low amounts of money. Uber gave everyone free rides. That was kind of cool, but it's really expensive. You cannot do it unless you have $1 billion funding round.
Right. So I agree. It's really hard to break into any niche as an entrepreneur, whether it's an e-commerce store or whether it's a SaaS tool, a cloud-based tool, which is very hot, been very hot for a while, business tools, cloud-based business tools. But those are what I see the cloud-based business tools growing exponentially in this day and age, more so than a new e-commerce site, for instance. Now, not that being said, a new e-commerce brand could prop up like something like Roman, and they do it with a lot of TV advertising. What happens with these companies, what I've noticed is once they achieve some amount of success online, and they have that investment round, they take the money and they throw it at TV, right? And the reality of it is TV does drive user acquisition. There's no doubt about it. So when you combine, decent digital advertising strategy with a boatload of TV advertising, you can really ramp up your customer acquisition. But in order to do that, you have to have the money. So those companies has a huge advantage that can actually tap into that, that marketing budget and really, blow through the budget. Whereas a smaller company is getting it out of the mud, as they say, it's much harder to make, it work as an entrepreneur, bootstrapping it, funding it yourself, with who other investors' money that, you've asked whatever to invest. So still possible, but they would have to tap into a really, someone who really understood digital marketing and how to do online advertising and make it work online. If they tapped into a someone like that, then in my opinion, they can make it work.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, that was kind of my next question. What is a company where you feel like, well, they've really been able to grow in the last couple of years, or last 2 years maybe, in a bootstrap manner to huge audience size. And on the other hand, as a success story, and maybe on the other hand, a company that where you expected, even with the big budget, it would make a big impact, but it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, it's hard to name names. I mean, most of the companies, like I said, that will grow, like I said, someone like a Freshly, or Roman, or companies that are able to bootstrap it and grow. Some box companies, Subscription box companies. That's been very hot. I've seen several get big and sell themselves, get acquired, and they didn't.
There's a lot of wine companies, like online wine stores, that seem to have taken off.
Box of pet snacks, pet treats once a month, or baby things once a month, or the monthly box subscription services. I've seen quite a few of those.
I talked to a perfume company, like a monthly kind of random perfumes that you can try, and then you get a little more in the next delivery.
Yeah, beauty products is very popular. Anything on a monthly subscription basis. Monthly subscription stuff is really rocketed the last few years. So when people come to me and they say, what kind of business should I start? Anything on a monthly subscription, whether it's a monthly box, or it's a online service that charges monthly, whatever it is, monthly. There's, subscription-based businesses are all of the thing to do, because they're residual. They're residual, so you can do the customer acquisition and then retain the current customers and charge them more. So once you're retaining and renewing and rebilling people, that can help fund or offset the cost of new user acquisition. So anything on a subscription basis is all of the thing to do, in my opinion. E-commerce is tough, to start an e-commerce store and make it work. Very difficult. Not even going to sugarcoat it. So I see, subscription stuff and B2B tools, SaaS tools. That's a good industry that I recommend people go into, that are asking me what should they go into, and I'm in that space too. I'm building tools and working with companies that build tools. So in my opinion, that the tool scene, is where it's at. Where the money's at, and where I see a lot of companies like Intercom, Drift, the list goes on and on of cloud-based companies that have grown exponentially the last 3 to 5 years and are really crushing it. Yeah,
I agree with you. This field has definitely been, for consumers as well as for businesses. I almost feel it's a little easier for consumers, the subscription model, but for businesses, I started a SaaS company, so to speak, 20 years ago, and it was just crushingly difficult to even to explain the model, because at the time it was, you buy a license, it's a lifetime license, or at least it's a long-term license, and you put it on your servers or you put it on your desktops, and that was it. And we started that 20 years ago and said, no, you pay $500 a month, or you pay $200 a month, depending on the specific product. And it was basically only targeting businesses. And it was an almost impossible sell, because they were like, oh, we don't own it, we will not buy it. But we said, well, any software you buy, you don't own it, you just get a license. And it was impossible to even explain. And now I think these higher priced, depending on where you start, Slack is doing very well with a low price tag. But generally, the idea seems to be, if you sell to businesses, there's a higher subscription price, say $99 or up to $500 a month. And if you go to consumers, it's somewhere in the Netflix zones. It's somewhere between $1 and $20 a month. That seems to be the hot spot. And I fully agree with you. This is a model that incorporates a lot of it solves a lot of problems that online marketers have, because the revenue per customer is relatively high, because the lifetime value is relatively high, because people don't just cancel their subscription. There's a little bit of hassle sometimes involved, and even if it's not, they like to try it out, and then maybe they forget about it, or maybe they love it in many cases. So there is a certain lifetime value that you can go out and raise money on, right? If you have a lifetime value per customer that's $200 or $300, that's something you can even go to the bank. I think there's a bunch of people. You can even go to Stripe. Stripe, you can say, this is the track. You're going to use Stripe as your credit card processor. This is my track lifetime value. Why don't you give me some financing? And Stripe is very open to this now. If they see your cash flow, they give you money in advance. And that's not like it can be a loan, but it can be an equity investment. And there's a company I talked to, Pioneer. They actually track your Stripe as well, and they're part of the Stripe ecosystem. But they give you up to $1 million if they see that you are scaling up your Stripe subscriptions. Oh. So they don't even talk to you. Like they look at your Stripe for 2 days, and they give you a goal, and you break that goal, and they're like, okay, here's the $1 million, have fun. And they do this to anyone in Uganda or wherever you are. So I think it's a great metric, and not just for yourself because it works, but also because investors love this shit. It's better than just eyeballs. They see, okay, this has a real value, and we put a number on it, and then it all goes down to the customer lifetime value. But then you're done, right? You can literally just let it run on autopilot, unless your acquisition costs change a lot.
Yeah, all the investment is going into these type of tools. You know, they don't even want to talk to you unless you are billing people monthly. They don't even want to talk to you. And I don't blame them, because every single one of those I've seen has just blown up into a huge thing. And hiring all these people, and and the funny thing is, the people, they're not necessarily brilliant people that are coming up with these tools. They're smart people, not definitely are. Much respect, but I see people that aren't that smart, having wildly successful tools out there, and
then this is the place to go, right? If you see, that's going to be the entrepreneurial test. If you see people who are kind of just got lucky and they don't really know what they're talking about, they still make a ton of money, then this is where you want to be. Right. You never know if this trend lasts, but that seems to be the ultimate test.
Yeah. And it's I think it's going to last. The only thing that wouldn't make it last is just saturation. There can only be so many live chat tools. There can only be so many, sales tools. That being said, if you do it a little different, or you do it with AI, or you do it, something a little bit more effective, you can woo people over. You can say, listen, you need to leave Salesforce because our tool blows away Salesforce, or you need to leave Drift because our tools, our tools, like Drift on steroids, or, our chatbot, chatbot is superior to the one you're currently using. So there's always, you can always steal clients away like that. From competitive. So it's still very much wide open in my opinion. There's still room there to make moves.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. This is a hot segment, and I think I agree with you. It's going to stay hot for quite some time, and it makes life a little bit easier. And the good news is also, for most entrepreneurs, you can scale this up within bootstrap budget. You don't need to worry about $1 billion. You don't have to worry about the vision fund.
Overhead. There's very little overhead.
Yeah, you just need yourself, right? And need yourself, a little bit of content, and maybe a few people that know marketing, and you can pull that off.
Well, you do need the code. You do need the devs, though. You do the cost is in having the product, the application, developed. The tool, product, or the app, whatever it is. The cost is really in the dev, and having really good dev people, on it. Once you spend what you need to spend to get the tool created, then you can start, and you bring on some clients, and you can start hiring the salespeople and the customer success people and the, all of that. And that can fund also more dev, upkeep and building the tool into more features. And so then it starts like snowballing. So yeah, tools is, when people ask me what they should go into online, tools. That's always my first answer.
Yeah. Help me a little bit to understand how you feel this role of an outside marketing agency, it really plays out with your clients. They might be smaller corporations, bigger corporations, a single entrepreneur. How do you feel you can get this effective knowledge transfer to work? I think this is what you're really after. How do you find them, right? And B, how do you interact with a certain organization who probably already has good marketing, who's been or not? I mean, but I assumed it's not terrible. Otherwise, they wouldn't be around anymore, and they wouldn't want to spend money on you. How does this interaction work? And do you think it's gotten easier or harder to just basically be in your own, or being part of a digital agency that isn't in New York City and has like 5,000 people over the last couple of years?
Great question. The digital agency game has gotten a lot more cluttered. There's a lot more agencies out there. I mean, there's people out there trying to convince people to just own agencies with no background, right? I mean, there's courses out there. There's people pushing the concept of start your own agency with no experience, right?
Yeah. So on TikTok, I assume.
Everywhere.
Or YouTube, yeah.
Everywhere, dude, YouTube, Facebook, everywhere. Everywhere you can advertise. Things like that are getting pushed out there. So part of it is a lot of bad agencies out there, a lot of crappy agencies out there. Where my agency, is different is I work with all the clients myself. I have, people managing the ad campaigns and optimizing them, but I do all the strategy, deal with the clients, and drive all the, what's being done with the ad campaigns to make them work. The CRO on the website, like we talked about. Unless you implement an approach that addresses the website's conversion rate and run very effective ad campaigns with the right strategy, that's the winning combination right there. There's no way around it. I don't care how good you are at managing Google Ads or whatever platform it is, you're still at the mercy of the website's performance or effectiveness. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of I'd say 99.9% of agencies will just come in there and say, oh yeah, we'll take over your Google Ads campaign or your LinkedIn or your Facebook ads, and we'll just do it better, right? Well, no. That's a horrible argument to win the business. Not that can't work, because they do. They are able to, just convince companies that don't know what the right approach should be, that they can maybe do it, manage the ads better. So, there's also what also has to be overcome is previous working with agencies previously. They've had bad experiences working with them previously. Their in-house team has had bad experiences running ad campaigns that didn't work as well as they wanted. So you're overcoming bad agency experiences and in-house people not able to make the campaigns work well enough. So, but when I speak to the client, obviously it's what can we do to the website to improve it? What have you tried previously? Let's analyze that, and I'm going to explain why it didn't work. And then, we're going to come in and make it work better, because we're going to address the CRO and, manage the campaigns more effectively, in my opinion. And that strategy in itself is going to lead to better results. But as far as their in-house staff, they'll hire me, clients will hire me to work with their in-house staff just to make them more effective, digital marketers, to how they're managing the campaigns, what their strategy is, how they even perceive digital advertising and how to make it work and how to make it scale. So I'll coach them, mentor them, hone their skills and just turn them into rock stars, quote unquote, by just, honing their skills basically. So that's something I do with companies can be effective.
Yeah. You mentioned that just briefly, and I was approached, I don't know how they find me, but there must be a good way to look that up. A lot of agencies, so to speak, often from Eastern Europe, approached me. One thing that I always get approached is, we built your mobile app. I have like 30 of those emails every day. But that seems to be a thing. But the other thing that is much more rare, but it's companies that basically say, well, we give you, we change your AdWords campaigns, we change your LinkedIn campaigns, as you say, and they give us a week or two. And if the ROI hasn't gone up, you don't owe us anything. Obviously, they don't. If it's gone the wrong way, then I don't get anything paid from them. But they basically say, why don't you try it out? And if, say, you run a campaign $10,000 a month, and your ROI improves, so your cost per customer goes down, and you save, I don't know, say $1,000 a month, you would give that agency 20% of those savings or 50% of the savings. There's different pitches. I always felt that's a really strong pitch. I right now don't spend that much on Google AdWords, but I'm like, well, what's the real risk, right? The risk is that they miss, that you overspend for like a week or two. And but they must have done this before. You can check some of the credentials. I always felt this is a really good pitch, because as an advertising agency, you really have no upfront cost. You basically work with the client. You're very much aligned, and then you make potentially a ton of money, right? Because if that keeps continuing, if your knowledge really shows off in these campaigns, and the conversion goes up, you make easily $1,000 a month from just one customer. Is it something you've considered? Is it something you find as common, or you feel like this is just not worth doing it because you don't understand the concept?
Yeah, it's a gimmick, like anything. It's a gimmick, of a way to get in the door, or a way to take over their ad campaigns and supposedly make them work better. It can work. It depends on those campaigns that they're taking over, how effective they were, But like I said, if they're not addressing the conversion aspect, then, they may or may not be able to run more effective campaigns. They may. It's a gamble. It's a roll of the dice. It depends.
But Google and Facebook show you conversion, right? It's very apparent what the conversion is. I mean, it doesn't mean it's the same lifetime value, but for like the short-term conversion, it's perfectly trackable.
Yeah, and like I said, it can be an effective way to go about it, but just because they charge you in a gimmicky kind of way, in my opinion, doesn't mean they know what they're doing, right? And they could cost you money potentially. The cost per customer could go up,
Yeah.
And then, okay, we're not going to pay you any fee, but your cost per customer just went up. So it's truly a roll of the dice. And I wouldn't hinge the decision on any kind of like way they charge. I wouldn't base the decision on that, because regardless of how they charge, what you want are better results at the end of the day. So to me, it's about the strategy, the approach, the methodology, the process, who's actually managing the ads. Are they actually trying to make the conversion rate go up? If those things aren't, in place, then how they charge is, pointless, in my opinion. Now we have done things where we would charge like a percentage of the return on ad spend or the ROI. So you can charge based on not a monthly fee necessarily, but 20% of the return on ad spend, for instance, or 20% of the profit. There's different ways of structuring it. I've always been comfortable the way I do it. I'll do a monthly fee that's affordable in my opinion, and then we'll get a piece of the revenue or the upside that we realize, or we help the client realize. We'll get maybe like a piece of the conversion increase. There's different ways of structuring it that work for both parties. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm asking for a friend for this one. No, I'm just curious. So the travel industry obviously has fallen apart, right? 90% of international flights have stopped operating, and depending on the country where you go, 50 to 60% of the domestic flights are still in operation, and many of them are certainly on a lower cost. So there's amazing deals out there if you know where to look, and the travel industry is close to my heart. I have a current travel startup. I had one before that. I was involved in another one before that. So I always felt like strongly about travel. In your experience, and given how much of a minefield travel is now, what do you think in the travel industries are trends that actually work? We've seen the demise kind of Expedia, and Google Flights is now coming on and kind of taking over the whole flight search and the flight booking to an extent. You can't book it through Google Flights. You have to go through another site. But it's kind of taken over the meta search, and it's also taking over what Expedia used to do to an extent. Expedia is still relevant and they're being linked, but it's kind of in danger of dying out, so to speak. And most of the money they made came from hotels, and the hotel business has changed way more than the airline business, I feel. Where do you think in digital advertising and digital marketing for travel, do you have trends where you feel like, whoa, this is really going to take off, and these are things where you feel like, whoa, this has gotten much harder than it used to be?
Well, it's gonna be dictated by the consumer's demand to travel. When that returns, all of that stuff is going to return. It's just going to take a while because of how everything was handled and how this pandemic has, spread around and all of that. And I don't know what can be done. I'd have to think about it, what can be done in the short term to try to make the channel, execute better, convert better, would always be my answer. But, it's kind of like one of those things that the whole industry is just going to have to wait. They're just going to have to take the loss for a year or two. And then when it roars back, be in a position to capitalize, but it's going to be tough the next year, until it returns to, 70, 80, 90% of what it used to be. It's just one of those things that unfortunately was really negatively impacted, by what happened.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I feel the travel landscape will look quite different than it used to be. I don't think there's going to be, you basically shut it off and then you switch it on again. And it usually you see this in other industries. Kind of we saw this with the general e-commerce in 2000. A lot of stuff that was kind of hypey and didn't work or was just barely profitable anyways, that kind of went away. And then a lot of things that would have come anyways, what it might have taken 5 or 10 or 15 years, they suddenly just, they would get 90% of the market share. And I see this with Google Flights. I see this generally with flight search, what happened. And I feel there's a bunch of destinations who are different. And I see this also with, how airlines are operating. There's like Qatar, you could say it was especially hard hit. You can't even immigrate to Doha anymore. But they've been able to keep up most of their travel network, most of their flights, even to Australia. And so is Turkish Airways. They're basically back to the same destinations they had. They don't fly daily, but they have the same amount of destinations. And they've been pretty strong and growing strongly. And it's been a strong trend because their cost base is so low. And they're basically back to old form. Obviously not the passenger volume is back, so there's only like it's 60%, but they only basically operate international flights. They only have like 3 or 4 domestic flights. So there's success stories, and then you have like KLM who basically shut down their whole operation, or Norwegian that basically doesn't exist anymore. And travel as a digital thing was on the forefront. I think for a long time, it was on the forefront of digital marketing. And then kind of, I don't know what happened, or maybe nothing happened the last 10 years. It didn't really accelerate so well out of this. There was like Iceland Air, I forgot the name, Wow Air, who really created a huge buzz with their campaigns and came out of nowhere and just created this huge amount of flights. And then it went away again 2 years later. Same is true for Norwegian. So there was a bunch of companies who really used digital marketing to the extreme, and then went away. And I don't see travel as much anymore as a trailblazer for digital marketing. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just because the travel industry is such a weird place. It is a really weird place with very conservative people, but conservative in a weird way. Let's put it this way. They really have zero curiosity. There's zero interest in innovation.
Well, you're right, because for many years, travel, companies, Travelocity, Expedia, Priceline, they really, led definitely the travel industry, but like you said, digital advertising, those are some of the biggest advertisers, right, online, because that was so many people traveled, and it was just a good industry to be in until 2020.
I thought even before that, like the last 10 years, there wasn't as much. The volume was maybe the same, but the growth rate and the innovation was basically going down to zero before that, like say 2015 already.
Yeah, well, I think some of that is, it evolved as much as it could. It evolved as much as it could because it was such a good industry to be in for so many years that funded a lot of the evolution of those companies and what they were doing online. And then it all had to come to a screeching halt. But yeah, I mean, it got saturated like anything, travel. But travel was still pumping along, all the way up until last year. I mean, it may have been, plateauing, like you said, for a few years because it had reached a high level. It had reached saturation. There's only so many people traveling. There's only so many, ads you can run. So that may be part of it. It's just it reached saturation. Yeah.
I mean, on that maybe positive note, because it's hopefully going to come back. Thanks for doing this, Evan. That was fantastic. I learned a lot. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it definitely will come back. And they'll be testing people and vaccinating passports, vaccine passports, and they're going to do what needs to be done to get the travel industry back up and running. It's just going to take a little time to get those ducks in a row and get those processes in place. But once all those logistics are in place and everyone's getting vaccinated, it's going to come back, roaring back. It's definitely going to come roaring back. So the key is to be positioned well when it comes roaring back.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, thanks again for doing this. And I hope we can talk again once things have changed a little bit. And I hope to see what's the next big thing in advertising.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
Evan, thank you. Bye-bye.
you.